Certainly another beautiful but scorching hot day in Texas, as well as it is all over the country, to be exact. John received information from our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ in the book of Revelation. And it shows that there would be an end-time system that would rise, a world government, and many people call it the Antichrist system. But this system would fight Jesus Christ at his return. In order for this system to rise, there has to be a way. There has to be a method by which it rises on the world scene and overthrows constitutional governments, overthrows republics and other countries and their forms of government. In Revelation chapter 6, verse 3 and 4, it said, "When he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth." So there will be world revolutionary movements. There will be world wars, wars of liberation, which means to overthrow countries from republican forms of governments and other forms to international communism, and that they should kill one another. And so they kill up to 1/3 to 1/2 of the population that they deem will not fit themselves into the New World Order. And there was given unto him a great sword. So someone provided the economics so that they could have a military just for the purpose of overthrowing governments. In Revelation 13:1, it mentions that a government will rise called a beast. And it will rise out of the sea of humanity. So it's going to be a world government. Now we're talking about the United States of America, since this is where we live. The United States Constitution, remember that old dusty document that many of us have heard of but don't know that much about? It creates 3 separate branches of government, and it establishes the powers that each has. The legislative branch is the most important. It's granted the sole power to make laws in this country. The judicial branch is granted the least amount of power. And then the executive branch is designed to have a president who is ordered to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. There is no lawmaking power given to the judges nor to the President of the United States, but something has happened. All of that has changed over a process of time. The President of the United States solemnly pledges to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. His only way of ever having a hand in legislation is to veto a bill that he feels is not good. In the nearly 5 years that President Bush has been in office, he has never vetoed a single bill. Why? Surely some bill would have been bad and not good. There is a reason for it. Because President Bush allows Congress, that's the Senate and House of Representatives, to do something that is completely unconstitutional. They've created a tactic by which they can change the laws that are passed by Congress. It's called signing statements. And so he allows the Congress, Senate and House of Representatives to compromise on a bill, and they have their signing day for the public and the cameras to see it. And then something takes place behind the scenes. By this illegal, unconstitutional signing statement, the President of the United States interprets what the law says to him. Sometimes this law as he interprets it, is the exact opposite in intent. In other words, we may have laws that are passed to protect us and our security, to close the borders. But then the president signs a statement at the bottom of the legislation giving his interpretation that reverses everything the Congress has done. A columnist by the name of Charles Savage pointed to numerous instances of this circumvention of the Constitution and its limited executive power in an article that he wrote, and it was in the newspaper. He said that daily our Constitution is being changed and power is being centralized in the hands of one man that could eventually make him a dictator over the country. But how could Revelation 13, verse 1, the rise of world government, come about if there weren't a way? No, the Bible means exactly what it says. You see, these signing statements became more common when a man, Attorney General Edwin Meese, during the President Ronald Reagan administration, suggested that he use it as a means to increase executive power. Ronald Reagan didn't use it, neither did the father of President George W. Bush. Neither did Bill Clinton, but only a few instances. But since the current president at this taping, George W. Bush, since he came into office, by the year 2006, he had issued 750 of these signing statements to change law that your representatives, your senators, have compromised upon to protect the nation from tyranny. And he is the one who has signed them and then continued to operate as if those laws did not exist. And so America is becoming a police state and not even knowing how it's happening. All he has to do is place it in the Federal Register, and then it becomes law. It has the force of law. Now, obviously, the office of the president is becoming more powerful almost on a daily basis. We can all look and we can see that. There seems to be little or no restraint holding back a president of the United States anymore because of all the executive orders and signing statements that have been made. But Revelation 13, verse 1 would never occur. To be exact, the entire chapter of Revelation 13, with a coming mighty military power, persecution of the saints, bearing rule over every single land surface on earth, could not happen if someone was not playing out the role of Bible prophecy. Not that he means to, but he is. And then there would be no economic situation that would come on the world scene where you could not buy or sell without the mark of the beast unless someone was promoting it. And so it is. The congressional laws that have been given to every one of us and passed into law has been totally ignored. Now, illicit presidential power should be abolished, but it will not. Otherwise, Revelation 13:1 could not occur. The Constitution eventually will simply disappear as it already has in force. We still use it on our lips, but it has no force anymore and has not for a long period of time. Of course, the suggestion to get around the Constitution was made by the Council on Foreign Relations, a Marxist organization founded in 1919 by Colonel Edward Mandell House, and then other Marxists ever since. And one man who made the suggestion was Richard N. Gardner. Back in the 1970s, when he said we'll have to get around the Constitution, make an end run around it. That's what they've been doing ever since. So basically, the Council on Foreign Relations, you could substitute their name as the Council for Revolution, to overthrow the government of the United States. They are the ones who have been invited into advisorships to presidents, State Department personnel, and so on. Way back in the 1930s, during the Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration, when he brought in the first socialistic program called the New Deal. But the program now being implemented by the Bush administration under a false label of security and prosperity partnership with Canada and Mexico is a perfect example of subversion of our constitutional protections by the powerful elite, Council on Foreign Relations, globalists, one-worlders, internationalists, Marxists, communists, socialists, the Atlantic Alliance, Bohemian Grove, and on the list goes. Skull and Bones, one of the most secretive organizations which President Bush, his father, and grandfather all belonged to, and each one in their turn helped to destroy the Constitution of the United States. It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or Democrat if you run for the presidency. They have control of both parties. W. Cleon Skousen, assistant to J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI, said that was one of the goals, was to capture one or both parties and then run them for president to change our government, prepare it for world government. In the year 2000, both those who ran for the presidency were members of Skull and Bone. They were both working for world government. All those personalities who surround President George W. Bush today are members of the Council on Foreign Relations, the identical people who surrounded his father. After all, his father, George Herbert Walker Bush, president in 1989, vice president twice before that, head of the FBI, head of the CIA, and on his credentials goes. They all, the same people, surround the current president, members of the Council on Foreign Relations, working for a one-world government. A former FBI agent by the name of Dan Smoot wrote a book called The Invisible Government, and according to him, the Council on Foreign Relations is the ones who is changing America from a republic to a democracy. A democracy is a stand-in word in place of republic. Democracy is a stand-in word that means socialism, communism. And so they can change little by little our Constitution to that of a socialist, communist country, and we'll wake up one day and not even know how it happened. One gentleman who ran 6 times for the President of the United States on the Socialist Party ticket said by liberals providing legislation in Congress, we would wake up and have socialism one day and not even know how it happened. And as if parroting the same phraseology, Nikita Khrushchev in 1959 said, yes, we will give them little doses of socialism, communism, until one day they will wake up and have communism and not even know how it happened. What did it say in Revelation 13:1? That there was coming a beast to rise up out of the sea. Revelation 6:3 and 4 shows the method that Satan and his henchmen are using to create world government. They were given the military apparatus by ultra-rich Wall Street investors, international bankers, the House of Rothschild, the chief, J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, the Ford Foundation, and on it goes. The ultra-rich are financing international communism. The Council on Foreign Relations operational scheme is called the Security and Prosperity Program. Now, this is to finalize the death knell of America. On June 9th, 2005, anchorman Lou Dobbs began his evening broadcast that night with a very provocative statement, and I'll quote his statement. "Good evening, everybody. Tonight, an astonishing proposal to expand our borders to incorporate Mexico and Canada and simultaneously further diminish United States sovereignty. Have our political elites gone mad?" End of quote. Mr. Dobbs seems to be one of the only people of the establishment media in America who has the courage to stand up and tell the American people what is happening, that we're on the verge of losing our country, all because of false information called treaties that are not treaties at all. That's how they brought about the European Union, by saying it was a common market for the good of everybody and that they would prosper under it. And now they've expanded, and each one of those countries has lost its national sovereignty to be merged into this all-powerful world government that's coming on the scene. So now they want to make a North American continent of Mexico, Canada, and the United States. And who was it but the Council on Foreign Relations that laid down the program, founded by international socialists, communists, Marxists. And what did the Bible say? This red horse would go out. It would take peace from the earth. They've overthrown government after government in Africa, in Asia, under military guard. And now they're surrounding the United States to finish us off. To be exact, Lou Dobbs noted that border security is what the American people want, so that we can fight terrorism, Islamic radical terrorism. But he left out communist terrorism, because right down in Havana, Cuba, in 1966, the communists under the GRU and the KGB had a meeting of all terrorists of the world. And there were Islamics there who represented the largest number of terrorists. They created a program of international terrorism for every continent on the face of the earth until they overthrew them all for world government. The last would be the United States, because they would use the funding from the rich in America to support those on the other continents. But he said that yes, America is now going to have a common border that includes Mexico and Canada. The United States of North America, you could call it. And that way anybody could go from Canada to Mexico, Mexico to Canada, in between. They've even created and had a meeting in Waxahachie, Texas, in July 2006 concerning a superhighway that's coming from the Mexican border all the way up to the Canadian border, so that they can send trucks, free passage, trucks, people from Canada to Mexico and everywhere in the United States. So there'll be freedom of movement everywhere. There will be no illegal aliens anymore, because everybody, all 107 million Mexicans, will now be United States citizens. All 30 million Canadians will be United States citizens, and United States will be Mexican citizens and Canadian citizens, because we will erase the borders. This is what is happening right now. And this is a program that has been laid down. It's going to be one big country. And so who laid the program down that is supposed to be complete by the year 2010? None other than a communist. a doctor pastor. This doctor pastor said he wanted it accomplished by the year 2010. He went before the Senate and he gave testimony concerning this whole program. And he gave in written form a booklet called Building a North American Community. In this, he laid very clear that there would be no more national sovereignty for the United States of America. The Bill of Rights and the Constitution will be obsolete because a tribunal will rule over the three countries. How is Revelation 13 taking place in America? Our leaders are selling us down the river. Not one person has had an opportunity to vote whether they will merge into a world government or not, or even a trilateral area of Mexico, Canada, and the United States. Within this, according to Lou Dobbs of CNN, in this task force by the Council on Foreign Relations and their pamphlet, Building a North American Community, it said that our military and law enforcement will cooperate between all three countries. It says that an exchange of personnel that brings Canadians and Mexicans into the Department of Homeland Security in the United States. This is going to be a part of the program. Then another part of the program is that temporary migrant workers will be expanded to full mobility of laborers from Mexico into the United States. Anyone who wants to come. Think of the low labor, the cheap labor. How many more millions of Americans will be thrown out onto the street and have no jobs? It's happening. It's mind-boggling, and it's right before our very eyes for us to see. This has already become official United States policy. Yet the Congress of the United States has not even voted upon it. The President had a signing statement to adopt it. They already have over 300 task forces laying down the rules and the regulations to implement the merger of all three countries by the year 2010. Is the beast of Revelation 13 rising? The Bible says there'll be 10 global groupings of nations. The European Union is one. There'll be 10 that will cover the entirety of the globe, and all 10 will give their power to one individual called the beast, the world governor. All of this started when President George W. Bush convened a meeting down in Waco, Texas. They used Baylor University facilities. They invited Mexican President Vicente Fox and also at that time Canadian Prime Minister Paul Martin. They have a new Prime Minister now who has taken up the gauntlet. They met at Baylor University. All of these brought in their respective cabinet officials to form dozens of working groups so they could have everything finalized by the year 2010. On June 27, 2005, cabinet ministers of these three countries issued their report entitled Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America. Representing the United States was Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, member of the Subversive Council on Foreign Relations. Secretary of Homeland Security Michael Chertoff. Secretary of Commerce Carlos Gutierrez, who has Mexican ties in Mexico City with communists. And so Mexico and Canada brought their counterparts. What did they determine? In summary, they determined this is the first step. Now we must transform the ideas into reality. It will be a North American continent of Mexico, United States, and Canada as one large country. No more United States of America. NAFTA, the North American Free Trade, was only one and the first step. CAFTA is another. It's going to merge all 34 countries in the Western Hemisphere together, from Canada all the way down to the most southern part of South America. But this is an intermediate step, and it's intended, according to their written literature, to evolve progressively into a convergence of all three nation states into a supranational regional system of governance, ultimately to be merged into a larger regional system for the entire hemisphere. So that's all 34 countries combined. Your Bill of Rights, your Constitution will be gone. The so-called Security and Prosperity Partnership was launched by newly elected President George W. Bush, but nobody heard about it, and Vicente Fox in the year 2002. Fox was pushing for more financial aid, amnesty for illegal aliens. He wanted a legalization of all aliens that came across. He didn't want them to be considered illegal anymore. He wanted easier access for Mexican guest workers in the United States. So they got together and they started their program that would merge all three countries together. And then there was another man who was Mexico's foreign minister by the name of George Castaneda. This is a very interesting man because he told the newspapers in Mexico that President Fox wanted the whole enchilada or nothing. He wants everything. That means a merging of America and Mexico. Free movement of all people from Mexico into America so they can have better jobs. So it is that President Bush announced his commitment to this program and said by the year 2010, it should be enforced. And for the first time, 5 days before September 11th, 2001, this was announced. Out of chaos, they want to bring about consistency. They want to see a world government come out of chaos. Could it have been that September 11th had more than just one backing, more than one purpose for it, more than one reason for it? Because they've always said, this is the Council on Foreign Relations, that Americans will never do anything unless a crisis will move them in the direction they want. We would never have even seen a program of merging Mexico, the United States, and Canada together, and the American people would not even listen to it unless there had been an emergency. It's called security. Security for America. And so they created Homeland Security. But this Mr. George Castaneda, the Mexican foreign minister, he was quoted in a Mexican newspaper by making the statement that he wants to tie down the United States like Gulliver, ensnarling the giant. He said that he wanted to have agreements, resolutions, regional and international covenants to strip America of its sovereignty. Does that sound like a person that we can trust? His background is that he is a communist. It's been documented. I'm not saying it. It's documented. He has been one of the main speakers at the Pratt House that houses the headquarters for the Council on Foreign Relations for many, many years, at least 20 years. He is one that has been working for that long a period of time with the Council on Foreign Relations to provide a program by which they can merge the Western Hemisphere in preparation as a regional government, as a preparation to merge it into a world government. To be exact, Mr. Castaneda is a long-time radical intellectual leader in Mexico's Communist Party. No wonder he was asked to come to the meetings and the headquarters of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's participated in annual terrorist conventions known as Sao Paulo Forum. He's been there every single year. He continues to admire communist revolutionary Che Guevara. And so his background is not good, but do you think one senator in the Senate meetings about this program even asked about his background, that it was communist? Not one. Perhaps most important, and this pertains to a joint charade that has taken place, is the fact that Castaneda has been a very close partner with this Dr. Robert Pastor of the Council on Foreign Relations, who wrote the program to unite Mexico, Canada, and the United States. Pastor has been a long-time Marxist himself. So here are two people, a Mexican Communist Party member and a Marxist in America, that have written the program for the emergence of Mexico, the United States, and Canada. Is Revelation 13 happening before our eyes? But is America asleep and doesn't even know what's happening to it? Yes, they're asleep. It's like somebody placed a veil of blindness over their eyes, and they cannot see through that veil as to what is happening. But thankfully, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ has removed the veil from our eyes, and we can see. In July of 2005, Castaneda appeared as an expert witness at a Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing on border security. Now here's a communist, a member of the Communist Party in Mexico. He says no border security is possible without Mexican cooperation. Now he was laying the groundwork. That is not true. You can put a fence up. You can put it 40 feet down in the ground. They can't dig tunnels under that. You can wire it. They do it in prisons, and prisoners don't escape. Now, why is it that he said that it cannot be done without Mexican cooperation? America's not cooperating on the southern border, but Mexico has absolutely sealed off the southern border of Mexico. And very few ever come through, and about 3% make it when they do. They're rounded up. They're imprisoned in Mexican jails. Mexico has some of the most stringent laws against illegal aliens anywhere in the world. And yet they want America to have no rules, no regulations. Why? They're communist. They want to eliminate the borders so that the whole world. Didn't John Lennon sing his song and it was banned back in the 1960s because it was all about communism? No more borders, no more religion. Come on over and join us. I hear it still on the oldies but goodies stations promoting their one world government. Now Congress is considering two bills concerning illegal immigration. Both bills would drastically increase federal surveillance upon the citizens of America and intrusion into the lives of American citizens. Could this be what it's all about? So they can create a big brother society? Isn't that exactly what Revelation 13 of the Bible describes? Nobody's going to be able to buy and sell without the mark. You have to worship the beast as if he were God, or they will behead you or put you to death in prison camps or camps to re-educate you, and if they can't, then the death penalty is automatic. The current Bush administration's immigration program is clearly more focused on faster border crossings than it is with stronger border security. And you would not know that if you didn't have the background of who is promoting the agenda. In fact, it's becoming more apparent that the administration's Security and Prosperity Partnership, as it's called, is actually an official adoption of the Council on Foreign Relations, building a North American community. Now remember, it's a Marxist organization. If you want to get our book, 512-page book, The History of God's People and the Coming New World Order, it'll tell you in there the background, the history of the Council on Foreign Relations, who founded it, what his political aspirations were for America. And so they are now bringing those political aspirations about. A physical merger of the United States with the other two countries of the Northern Hemisphere. This is the proposal of a communist, Dr. Robert Pastor of the Council on Foreign Relations. To be exact, he even wrote it in the January-February 2004 Foreign Affairs magazine put out by the Council on Foreign Relations. NAFTA was merely to be the first draft of an ongoing, dynamic, permanent process. Then the emergence of three countries together. Then all 34 countries in the Western Hemisphere. Pastor gave an opinion about post-9/11 security fears. He said that security fears is the catalyst for integration of the three nations. Bible prophecy, Revelation 13, right before our very eyes. He's a very radical person. He's a communist. He wants the overthrow of the United States government. CNN's Lou Dobbs reported on June 9th, broadcast, that Mexico is descending ever more rapidly into chaos, corruption, and open warfare because of rival drug cartels, the police that are siding with them, the military is getting involved in illegal drug running, and high government officials, and especially in Mexico City. He said they're forging close diplomatic ties with Cuba, which is communist, Venezuela, one of the most notorious South American communists running that country, and Nicaragua, with the former Sandinistas. They've all become friendly and they all have terrorist organizations. This is who Mexico is buddying up with. And yet, this is the very country, Mexico, that we're expected to merge with America and Canada. Mexico is very notorious for its corruption, whether it's the police, military, or elected officials, from the top to the very bottom. In 1997, Mexico's top official in the war on drugs, General Ribola, actually was arrested for working with one of the drug cartels. Evidence was brought forth at his trial that pointed to many of the other top military officials, police officials, even federal officials as accomplices. This is who we're going to be merged with. It's a done deal. They've already said it's going to happen. And if the Council on Foreign Relations says it, it's done. They have such power in Washington, D.C., they control the government of the United States. Canada also represents a very serious security risk for the United States, so why should we even consider going into a relationship with them? To be exact, their own Prime Minister and others in charge of intelligence for the Canadian government stated very clearly that outside of the United States of America, there are more official terrorist groups recognized and operating in Canada than any other country in the world. And he even listed some of them, representing those of the Middle East, Latin America, Irish terrorists, and he went on and on. They're all operating in Canada. Is Revelation 13 in action right now? Is it happening all around us? The radical background of the Council on Foreign Relations report, the primary author of that report, Robert Pastor, is very noteworthy. Then you can see clearly what is happening to our beloved country. Number one, as a Latin American expert in Jimmy Carter's National Security Council, Dr. Pastor was a prime instrument in toppling American ally President Somoza and bringing communism and the Sandinistas to power in Nicaragua. President Daniel Oduber of Costa Rica actually made a statement concerning Dr. Pastor, who was taking an official tour of that country with Rosalind Carter, the president's wife. He said that what was quoted to him was, "When are we going to get that," well, we don't use those kind of words in here, "Somoza up to the north, out of the presidency." And so Dr. Pastor saw to it he was toppled and overthrown. And number two, at the time he was picked by President Carter, Pastor was finishing up his stint as director of the Rockefeller and Ford Foundation, both been cited by the Senate Subcommittee on Un-American Activities as subversive. They financed Council on Foreign Relations task force papers known as the Lenowitz Commission. It supported revolutionary changes in Latin America. It called for the abandonment of our strategic canal in Panama, the Isthmus of Panama. And so it was that Jimmy Carter signed away the Panama Canal, and it was completed December 31st at noon, 1999. And thirdly, at the same time, Pastor was also a member of the Working Group on Latin America. This was a working group for the Institute for Policy Studies, a notorious and violent communist organization located in Washington, D.C., in which Bill and Hillary Clinton had close ties, and their number one supporter, Derek Shearer, that he was a roommate with as a Rhodes Scholar in England. Now this is important because you see, the IPS, the Institute for Policy Studies, is the operational arm of the former Soviet KGB and Cuban DGI intelligence network in the United States. He was a member of it. And he is the one who is helping to promote the merging of Mexico, the United States, and Canada. The entire careers of Dr. Pastor and his Council on Foreign Relations comrades indicate that they knew exactly what they were doing. He co-authored a work with George Castaneda in which he said they wanted to bind and enslave the United States like a helpless Gulliver. That's exactly what they want to do with their new tribunal that will be running the nations. Not the Supreme Court of the United States anymore. One of the boycott organizers, when all the illegal aliens demonstrated in about 75 to 100 cities around America, his name was Nativo Lopez. He was of the Mexican-American Political Association. This boycott, he said, would show illegal aliens have the power to shut down the system of America. However, the news flash is there was hardly even a blink. Only because the news media was there telling us about it is the only reason we knew that it happened. But the point is, who was behind all of these mass demonstrations so that the illegal aliens could become American citizens? Amnesty. Who was behind it? There would be a backlash against all of the positive things that were created by these illegal aliens, according to Linda Arreola. She was worked for the Office for Social Ministry of the Roman Catholic Church, the Diocese of San Diego, California. They support amnesty for all illegal aliens. She didn't want to see any backlash, so she did not want them to participate. But the actions went forward. The boycotts of American businesses, stopping working at the fast food restaurants, no more mowing people's yards, and so on. All the jobs that illegals take part in. And so what was it who was it behind all of this? This was just one of those demonstrations, and there were some of the rallying cries in every city. Now, how did this happen? Why would one in Dallas know the same thing they're saying in Los Angeles? Unless it was scripted and someone gave them the words when they spoke behind the microphones. One of the rallying cries was no to H.R. 4437. That meant no. We demand that the Congress of the United States pass no border security laws that will stop illegal migration into the United States. But the question is, what country in the world would allow this kind of thing to go on in their country and not put those in jail or deport them? But we're learning there is a program by International Socialism, Communism. They're the ones behind it. The Council on Foreign Relations. And so since they control the government of the United States and those that they put up for the presidency, and the people who sit at the head of the board, the CEOs of the Council on Foreign Relations, like the former CEO, David Rockefeller, chairman of the board of Chase Manhattan International Bankers. For 35 years, he headed up the Council on Foreign Relations until he passed the baton on. And so just like back in the 1960s, when the communists from 60 front organizations actually sponsored Dr. Martin Luther King to march in the streets of America to create riots and hope that they could overthrow the government. And so it is now. The same communist organizations are working behind the scenes as the organizers, the administrators, and funding for all the plaques that read the same, yellow and black, in every single city where there was a demonstration, where the same speech was given in every single city, where every banner was identical with the same wording, whether it was in Spanish or in English or a combination of both. They were identical. Is Revelation 13 taking place in America and we don't even know it? The public has no idea what is happening to them. One of those organizations that funded it and paid money to have these banners created was a Marxist-Leninist organization called the Workers' World Party. This is a militant communist party. They want the overthrow of the United States. Top officials of the Workers' World Party dominate another communist organization called the Answer Coalition. Yes, Answer, A-N-S-W-E-R. Brian Becker happened to be one of the most notable people of that organization. He's a member of the National Secretariat of the Workers' World Party, a communist organization. And so it is that there were 3 other individuals on both boards of directors of both of these communist organizations. They were the ones who sought out funding from certain large foundations in America and received it. From the Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, Rockefeller Fund Foundation. And they received the money so they could create all of these signs to be carried in 75 to 100 cities. Another militant individual in the Answer Coalition was Macrina Cardenas. She's head of the Mexican Work Without Borders. She doesn't want any borders whatsoever. She was the one who was often quoted on television during the illegal alien demonstrations. She has aligned her organization with the Mexican communist Zapata's army. She actually stated in her written literature that all of the forces that they have is a reserve army within the United States, a communist reserve army for the right moment in time. Is America under siege? Did V.I. Lenin say it correctly when he said, first we'll take Eastern Europe, then we'll take Asia, the masses of Asia, then we'll surround the United States. We'll not have to fire a shot. It'll fall like a ripe fruit into our hand. They now have a standing reserve army of communists inside the borders of the United States, prepared for the day. How do you think they got here? Across open borders. No wonder these communist organizations do not want the Americans to put up fences, to put up walls, to electrify them so that they cannot get into America. They're bringing their standing reserve army inside the border of the United States. Another organization called the Center for Community Change is one of the most important official sponsors of illegal alien demonstrations in America. To be exact, their website was the official website for the April 10th, 2006 demonstrations. The Center for Community Change has many revolutionary groups that are allied with it. And the founder of it was Saul Alinsky. You can look him up on the internet. He's there. He's a professional Marxist who has trained hundreds that are leading the agitation against stopping immigration reform. He has trained hundreds of leaders so that they can have an open door policy and bring in illegal aliens. To be exact, he even wrote a book called Rules for Radicals, which is nothing but a communist book telling how to revolutionize a country and to overthrow it. Change is what they want. They want to eventually come to the point where they can have violent Communist Workers' Party and other organizations working openly with illegal aliens to overthrow the southwestern part of the United States. And they're working with known communist, Chinese communists also in America, by the name of Margaret Chin and Mei Li, and both of whom are active leaders in this Center for Community Change, Fair Immigration Reform movement. They're on the board of directors. And so that we have communists at every turn behind this operation. To be exact, former Congressman Ron Dellums, who was a longtime Fidel Castro friend, close friend, and one of his staunchest supporters, happened to be behind the movement to allow illegal aliens to continue to come into the country unabated. The Communist Party USA also has been in the forefront in what is called the Chicano movement, or the Mexican movement. They've been in the forefront for 5 decades. That's 50 years. Many of their top leaders are radical, and they're turning off even some of the mainstream people who want illegal aliens to receive amnesty. But some of those people who are working behind these demonstrations or work behind them, and they're for illegal alien rights, are communist Jose Angel Gutierrez, who happens to be a professor at the University of Texas, Arlington, a Dolores Huerta, and then others right down the line. Every single one of them have been trained by Marxists, Alinsky. And so it is, these revolutionary Marxists are preparing by having their armies inside the border of the United States. They've provided leadership positions for the National Council of La Raza Marxists. Then there are other organizations that only use letters rather than names. And many of the leading Hispanic political organizations are peppered with these revolutionary Marxist members. This is our enemy. This is just exactly what the Bible said. Satan's tool is the red horse of the apocalypse. International communism. To overthrow governments, take peace from the earth, and then kill many once they come into control of a country. They have openly said that their goal is la reconquista, which means the reconquest. They're wanting to take back the southwestern part of the United States. They feel that it was stolen from them to begin with. But that's only a part of it. They call that region Aztlan, A-Z-T-L-A-N-D. They even have a flag for it. And the very word Aztlan means Mexican warrior. They plan on dividing the United States. But who is funding this revolution? And it is a revolution that is taking place in the United States of America. One of the leaders of the Southwest branch of the Council of Lareza said the following: "It can be said that without the Ford Foundation's commitment to a strategy of national and local institution building, the Chicano movement would have withered away." End of quote. So the Ford Foundation has for years funded all leftist organizations to promote world government. Those demonstrations did not spontaneously happen. They didn't just happen because people decided we want to demonstrate. That wasn't because people were angry and illegal aliens felt frustrated and that they felt they were unjustly being treated in America. No, the telltale signs of all this communist backing was there. The Ford Foundation money. Because there were identical signs, as I mentioned, identical banners, identical chants in every city, identical speeches. These are all hallmarks of very meticulous organization, not spontaneity. No, they planned, they organized so that they could bring this off. To be exact, they started planning it in 1994. And after all that period of time, finally felt they had it so organized that they could begin their assault upon the Constitution and the Bill of Rights of the United States and the southwestern part of the United States, to take it back. But who pays the salaries for these revolutionary staff members? Who pays for the thousands of rented buses that took school children to the demonstrations? T-shirts, flags, food, beverages that were dispensed during the demonstrations to the demonstrators. The money trail always led back to the tax-exempt Ford Foundation, just like the leader of the Lareza Southwest Council said. The Ford Foundation. Over the past 5 decades, the Ford Foundation has poured tens of millions of dollars into radical Hispanic organizations that have been leading the Latino immigrant and migrant populations in the United States. And more importantly, they have been training revolutionary leftist individuals to lead in that direction. Many of these organizations and campaigns that were funded by the Ford Foundation have actually been launched by leaders of the Communist Party USA. They received grants from the Ford Foundation. The Communist Workers' World Party received grants from the Ford Foundation. The Communist Front National Lawyers Guild that defends communists from the government and being put into prison. It's a well-known subversive organization. It was even investigated by the Senate Subcommittee on Un-American Activities, the National Lawyers Guild, and said it was one of the greatest fronts for the communist movement in America. The ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union. There was a 1994 book written by a Mr. William Hawkins. It was entitled Importing Revolution: Open Borders and the Radical Agenda. He had documented straight from the Ford Foundation documents through the Freedom of Information Act that the Ford Foundation had been funding these revolutionary activities. He said that more than 20 years ago, that's in 1984, they put a working paper together called Hispanics, Challenges and Opportunities. And the Ford Foundation outlined in this particular document how that they would create Hispanic leadership that would be leaning to the left toward Marxist communism. The Ford Foundation isn't alone either, because the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Endowment, it's another foundation, the Rosenberg Foundation, and George Soros and Bill Gates have all been funding this. You can look these foundations up on the internet. They have their symbols. They have their documents, many of them there. The Center for Community Change is one of the main national sponsors of the illegal alien demonstrations. It was launched by Marxist organizer Saul Alinsky, and it was paid for by the Ford Foundation. America, your tax dollars are also being used to help illegal alien causes. Because there is an organization called Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, which the federal government gives money to. And it's a Marxist organization. There's another one, the Southwest Voter Education Registration Project, funded by the federal government, your tax dollars. It's also laced with these revolutionary Marxists. The Ford Foundation grants in the year 2005 to these groups that were involved in the 2006 demonstrations included $350,000 to the Center for Community Change. A $130,000 grant was given to the Northern California Grants Makers, and $1 million to the Migration Policy Institute. And then 2 grants totaling $1,700,000 to the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund. So the Ford Foundation has been busy subverting the United States of America. The large Hispanic population is bound to produce leaders. Anywhere there is a large number of people, certain people will be leaders. This was documented in Mr. William Hawkins' book, The Importing Revolution. How that they had found those Hispanic leaders. They were not your middle class entrepreneurs. No, they were individuals who were left-wing, communist motivated. They wanted the overthrow of the United States. To be exact, his words were, they had a hatred beyond belief for America. And so it is. Do we see Revelation 13 jumping off the pages of your Bible? It's here. It will not go away because Bible prophecy is happening. In my closing statements today, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States during the Depression years, was a 32nd degree Freemason who invited the subversive Council on Foreign Relations into the government as advisors to presidents, senators, representatives, and the State Department. But Roosevelt did something else. He brought 3 men into the government. He put them on the payroll. Luther H. Gulick, Charles E. Merriam, and Louis Brownlow. They were hired by President Roosevelt, and they became the central figures in the early planning for the overthrow of the American government for a one-world government. The North America community. One of their intentions was to abolish the state, that's America, and replace it with regions. That's taken them over 70 years. They conceived the method by which they would do it and the techniques. And they are now being used by every president since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He said that they would have to go in a gradual procedure, step by step. And there would have to be a transformation of the United States from a republic with our Constitution and Bill of Rights into a socialist New World Order. They said that he would substitute the word democracy. And the word democracy instead of republic would simply mean socialism, communism. So when any president since Franklin Delano Roosevelt has called America a democracy, it means they are working for socialism, communism for America. To be exact, Mr. Merriam was the most important functionary in Roosevelt's out of his three men. And Mr. Merriam said very clearly that it's not a precept. The American states are finished. He went on to state that it was not a prediction, but he said, I affirm that they are gone. And America is about gone. It took them 70 years, but they're working on it. Charles E. Merriam was the go-between for the Rockefeller family and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He stated, and I quote, "Fortunately, our Constitution is broad enough in terms, flexible enough in its spirit, and capable of liberal enough interpretation by the judiciary to permit the adoption of democracy to changing conditions without serious difficulty," end of quote. So he said they would use liberal interpretations by the judiciary. Remember when I started this message? The judiciary, I showed they had no authority to pass laws. But here, their program is to be liberal judiciary decisions that would change the constitutional republic and adopt democracy. In his book entitled On the Agenda of Democracy, Merriam revealed exactly what he meant by democracy. It means the adoption of communistic, socialistic principles and goals. Step by step alterations were introduced to change the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And so the decline and eventual elimination of the state as we know it would come to pass. Charles E. Merriam was the mentor, the teacher of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was funded by the Rockefeller family. He was acclaimed to be the father of behavioral approach to political science. He had 3 master's degrees dealing with people, politics, powers. He merged them all together so that he could create a socialistic United States of America and the road by which he would achieve it. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a socialist. FDR had a very casual way about him. He had a fatherly figure. And so the nation loved him during the days of the Depression. They didn't even know that his New Deal was to be a part of changing America from its republic to a democracy, socialism. He also introduced and brought into the government the Council on Foreign Relations. President George W. Bush, like any other presidents in both parties, venerate, hold up for affection Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Every president before him does also. Charles E. Merriam summed up his doctrine by saying, and I quote, "Revolution is the old way. The new way is education, persuasion, cooperation, and participation." End of quote. Merriam set the course for Franklin Roosevelt and all future presidents to discreetly, according to his words, bring in socialism. So in Merriam's book entitled On the Agenda of Democracy, he advocated and defines communism. He deliberately labeled it democracy to cover up what he was talking about. By using democracy as a stand-in word, they would be able to gradually convert America into a socialist, communist country. Revelation 13, before our very eyes. Nikita Khrushchev did exactly what Merriam said. When he stood up and pounded with his shoe on the United Nations podium and said America will have legislation introduced by liberals in their Congress, and one day they'll wake up and be a socialist communist nation and not even know how it happened. Revelation 13 is happening. The idea was to get past the people and their objections to becoming socialist communist. And so he laid down his program. He said, we will use the Constitution and bring in socialism on the coattails of the Constitution. We will cloak socialism with constitutional rhetoric. And so we hear the Constitution talked about, but they never live it. Otherwise, they would have already taken care of the Federal Reserve System, which is unconstitutional. They would have already stopped President Bush in his drive to become a dictator in America. The Congress of the United States would have stood up and not allowed all of these laws to make us a police state go into operation. But they're happening. They would use the Constitution to successfully bring in communism without the people even knowing what was happening. Is there truly a dictatorship coming in America? Everything that we see today was laid down during the Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration. The New Deal, it was the first socialist program. Then we had the United Nations hatched and conceived. A communist standing at his right hand, Alger Hiss, to write the charter for the United Nations. Within it were the human rights that we see taking our rights away from us. Regional government was hatched in the 1930s. It's happening today. General and complete disarmament program, which was passed into law under the John F. Kennedy administration, was hatched in the 1930s. So everything took place because of this man, Merriam. And he was the mentor or teacher of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. They used the word democracy, meaning socialism, communism. Truly, we in America are at the twilight of our greatness. God is the one that gave us this country because we declared ourselves Christians. We lived the Christian way of life. But now suddenly this great nation is on the twilight of destruction to be merged into an all-powerful world government as described in Revelation 13. Communism destroys. Then it rebuilds societies after its own image, after its own principles. They always have a dictator. It's called the dictator of the proletariat. No wonder President Bush said it would be much easier to rule if he was a dictator. He knows about the program for world government. 10 regions will have a dictator ruling over them, and he will give their power to the beast, who will be the world dictator. The Council on Foreign Relations is the modern-day Illuminati, worshipers of Lucifer, Satan, the devil. It's had a change in name, and there are other organizations that are offshoots and branches also. They infiltrate into every corridor of power in order to gain control of government, the economics, religion, the military, the political. With their vast power in place now, truly it looks like this is going to be the twilight of the American adventure. But you and I are different than the rest of the world. You and I have had a wonderful experience to happen to us. It's found in John chapter 16, verse 13. Here's what it says. This is Jesus Christ doing the talking. Howbeit, when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth. For he shall not speak of himself, but whatsoever he shall hear, that shall he speak, and he will show you things to come. Jesus Christ said that if we have the Holy Spirit of God inside of our mind, we will be taught the truth. That's biblical truth, the doctrines of God. But it also said the Holy Spirit will show you the things to come. Jesus Christ, according to Revelation 19, the latter part of verse 10, states clearly that it is the spirit of prophecy. And so Jesus Christ is the one who shows and opens our mind to understand Bible prophecy. This great nation that God gave to us is now on the decline because of Satan's agents, and God is allowing it. That means the faithful need to remain faithful. As the old saying goes, buckle up your seatbelt. We're about to go on a ride. And if we're not under control of Jesus Christ and under his sheltering wings, according to Psalms 91, we're going to have a rough road to hoe. But because Jesus Christ has given us an understanding of Bible prophecy, we can foresee these things. He has given us a mind to understand his principles of the Bible, his concepts. Then we, of all people, if we are not a part of those that are sealed, those that are in this place called safety, wherever that might be, shame on us. But Jesus Christ is the one that says, when you see all these things happening, look up, for your salvation draws nigh.